Hi, Tim Tetrick, Partner Technology Strategist with Microsoft, and want to talk with you today about Azure Site Recovery. We'll briefly look at some of the challenges that ASR solves for, talk about ASR being used not only as a disaster recovery solution, but also as a powerful migration solution as well. Then finally, we'll look at how to price an ASR solution, leveraging the Azure Pricing Calculator. So first, let's talk about some of the disaster recovery challenges that we see with our customers today. First, challenges around costs. We know that protecting an entire environment with traditional DR solutions can be very expensive. So we think of, in the past, traditional DR solutions, you needed to have a backup data center, which can be very cost prohibitive to especially small and mid-sized businesses. We also see challenges around complexity. We know that it's very difficult to protect these complex environments and applications. It's also a challenge trying to test your DR policies, and many times in traditional DR methods, very disruptive to production workloads. So ultimately, in again, especially small and mid-sized customers today, we're seeing some, if not most customers having workloads that could benefit from disaster recovery protection, but are going unprotected due to the inherent costs and complexity. So let's talk a little bit about Azure Site Recovery and how it solves for that. So ultimately, Azure Site Recovery can help customers get their businesses back up and running in minutes with near zero data loss. And can do that by helping customers to leverage Azure as their backup data center. So instead of having to have that secondary data center, let's leverage Azure in the public cloud as our DR site. With ASR giving you automated protection and replication of your workloads today up into the cloud, with then the ability to fail over into those workloads up in Azure. Providing heterogeneous environment protection across Hyper-V, VMware, physical servers on-prem, and now currently in public preview, the ability to protect Azure VMs as well. So the ability to give you automated protection, replication, and failover of your Azure VMs into another Azure region. ASR also providing the ability to run disaster recovery drills through test failover. So the ability to actually test your disaster recovery solution in a test environment to ensure that it's going to work exactly the way you think it's going to work in the case of a natural disaster or any other kind of IT disaster. ASR also providing the ability to do orchestrated recovery of tiered applications. So if you have a multi-tiered application and you need, this machine to come up first, then this machine, and I need some, automation and some scripting around that, I can do that through recovery plans in ASR. But ultimately, ASR helping to minimize errors when failing over and then drastically reducing downtime for customers and helping to drive down those RTOs and RPOs, those recovery time objectives and recovery point objectives. So just a quick word here around when we talk about disasters and disaster recovery. What kind of disasters are we talking about here? A lot of people think of natural disasters, but as you can see here, most IT disasters are actually operational failures. We see things like power failures, IT hardware failures, network failures, IT software failures, even human error being a larger percentage of IT disasters than, again, natural disasters that we typically think of. But as you can see here across this whole spectrum, lots of IT disasters that our customers need to be concerned about. Okay, so secondly, as I talked about, Azure Site Recovery is also a really powerful migration solution as well. So when you think about migrating, it's really like a failover that is a planned failover that I'm never intending to fail back from. That's essentially what a migration is. So Azure Site Recovery is a really powerful migration solution as well. Again, the ability to migrate from multiple environments, heterogeneous support here across VMware, Hyper-V, physical machines, Azure to Azure, as well as third-party hosted and third-party public cloud providers like AWS, ability to do migrations from AWS into Azure, and all these across Linux and Windows workloads. ASR also providing that ability to migrate these applications with near zero downtime and with zero data loss. So the ability to move either a single application or even an entire data center to the cloud with very minimal impact to production use. Also, the no impact migration testing that I talked about with test failovers. So I can set this up, do a test failover into Azure, make sure that the system's going to work exactly the way I think it's going to work before I flip that switch and my production users start using that migrated application up in Azure. And then finally, it's free for the first 31 days. So with ASR, we know that it's a powerful migration solution. So every single VM, physical machine, whatever, is free for the first 31 days. So that if you complete your migration within the first 31 days, you're not going to pay any of those ASR charges. You'll pay storage, which we'll talk about in a second, but you don't pay any ASR charges for the first 31 days. So ultimately, ASR, really a complete migration and disaster recovery solution. So the ability to support any cloud, that means private cloud to Azure, on-prem to Azure, public cloud to Azure, and again, that's VMware, Hyper-V, physical machines, but also public cloud to Azure, so Azure to Azure, from Azure to a different Azure region, and from third-party public cloud like AWS VMs, being able to migrate or fail over those into Azure, and support it again across, really any OS across Windows and Linux. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how do I price Azure Site Recovery. So there's really two core components to pricing an ASR solution, and then there's two optional components. So the two core components are the ASR monthly charge per protected instance, and then there's storage on top of that. Now, the two optional components are if you happen to spin those VMs up in Azure, whether as a test failover or as a planned or unplanned failover, then I'm going to start paying those Azure compute charges. Now that's a per second charge only while I have them up. If I'm doing a test failover, it may only be a couple hours. Shut them back down, I'm only paying for that time. But as part of spinning up those VMs, I'll have also outbound data transfer charges, those egress charges, or if I do a failover and want to do reverse replication and fail back, I'll have some outbound data transfer charges associated with that. But again, as mentioned before, ASR free for the first 31 days, just paying for storage. All right, so let's take a look at pricing this solution out quickly in the Azure Pricing Calculator. So here we are in the Azure Pricing Calculator. You'll find Azure Site Recovery under Storage. I'll choose Site Recovery there. We'll go down and say View. I'm going to first choose my region. Let's say I'm in the West here, so I'm going to back up to the East US. Now you see here, there's two different types of site recovery. If I do happen to have a secondary data center, then Azure can help with the replication orchestration of my failover to a secondary data center. But again, more likely, again, especially in our small and mid-sized customers, they're going to leverage Azure as their backup data center and do that replication and failover to Azure. So let's say that I'm doing that here. Let's say I have two instances that I want to back up to Azure. That could be, again, a VM, a physical machine, whatever the case may be. Let's say I have two protected instances that I want to fail over to Azure or protect to Azure. So I'm going to put two instances here, $25 per protected instance per month after the first 31 days, which is free. And then the other thing you're going to have to know here to add is storage. So let's go back up under storage. We'll select storage, say view. So again, region East US. Now the type of storage that ASR uses is page blobs, unmanaged disks. So we're going to choose that. My storage can either be standard or premium SSD based storage. I can choose between LRS and GRS, so locally redundant storage or geographically redundant storage up in Azure. And then here I'm going to choose general purpose v1. General purpose v2 is rather new. It's targeted around cool and archive storage options, which isn't going to apply to me here necessarily, so I'm going to choose general purpose v1. Now, I have two VMs I'm protecting. Let's say each of those is about 250 gigs, so I'm going to be protecting 500 gigs, so that's what I need to price out for storage. You see here that that's about $25 per month for that 500 gigs to protect. The other thing I am going to have to pay for is storage transactions. Now, this first column here or row here is around when I'm using page blobs with VMs, which I'm not doing here, so I can get rid of that. Next, we're going to look at the transactions really for page blobs non-disk, which is what we're going to be using our storage here for. Now, this is, if you go out and look here in the pricing details, it describes the storage transactions as negligible. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, we're going to charge you for write and read operations. That's always hard to estimate, but you can see here that it's priced at, $0.0004 per 10,000 write operations and read operations. So even if I put in 100 here, which would be 1,000,000 write operations, if I put in 100 here, which would be 1,000,000 read operations, you can see we're looking at 4 cents for each of those per month. So again, most likely in most cases it will indeed be a negligible cost compared to the overall solution. So we're looking at our storage costs there of $25.07. The total charge here to protect two of these VMs at 250 gig each, approximately $75 per month. So I have a nice little estimate here. I can export that out to an Excel sheet if I want. But a nice ability to price and then estimate out those charges here in the Azure Pricing Calculator. All right, well, thanks for watching this overview of Azure Site Recovery, and hope everyone has a great day. Thanks for watching.